All right, welcome back to another episode of Around the Bases. Today's guest is Brett Huber. Brett is the owner of Maximize Pitching Lab in Southern Illinois. He is an alumni of Althoff Catholic. He went on to play at Ole Miss and then was drafted by the Detroit Tigers in the 2014 MLB Draft. After playing professionally, Brett moved back down to Southern Illinois and ended up opening MPL. And he's trained some of the top arms down there in Southern Illinois. We had a great conversation with Brett, just talking about his career and advice he gives to these high school arms trying to find success in high school and get to the collegiate level and hopefully beyond. So really appreciate Brett taking the time to sit down with us and talk about his advice and any wisdom he has to share with these kids. So really excited for this one. So let's get into it. Brett, thanks for doing this, man. I know you're super busy, so thanks for taking the time out of your schedule to sit down with us, talk through your career and kind of what you're up to now. So appreciate it.
Yeah, no doubt. Excited to be here. Finally get to meet you, Gavin, and Diego. I've known for a few years now. It's seeing him around Southern Illinois, so I'm happy to hop on and excited to be here.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to talk about your kind of early career at Althoff Catholic, just kind of the background of you being there and just kind of your early makings of, your baseball career.
So yes, I went to Althoff Catholic in Belleville, Illinois. I played for Brett Isaacs. Brett Isaacs, I think, coached there for almost 20 years, maybe in a little bit more. Brett was a big part of my life. He was a big part of my brother's life. Got to kind of see how he operated as my brother was in high school. My brother's 5 years older than me. He continued to play at Eastern Illinois and played in the Pittsburgh Pirates organization for 4 years. So kind of got to see how Coach I ran things. And they had very talented groups coming in before us. I got there. I was fortunate enough to throw, I think it was 4 innings or so, my freshman year for the varsity level. Sophomore year is when I kind of took a leap in my development. And I think my come out game was against, our rival Belleville West at Grizzly Stadium. I think I threw a complete or 6 innings or a complete game, double digit strikeouts against a team that was really good. So I was excited about that. Belleville Legion was super popular. Legion Ball in general was super popular back then. Just shows you how old I am. And myself, Jake Odorizzi, and Otto Roberts decided to. We upset some people at the time, but we went and played for Rick Strickland with the St. Louis Pirates, and that's really when things started to happen for us. It was very eye-opening for all of us when we started doing these travel tournaments. You're going and playing games, and there's anywhere from 10 to 20 scouts behind home plate, and we knew we were in the right place. And be able to have Brett Isaacs in my life, like I said, our head coach at Althoff, and Rick Strickland in my life throughout high school, learning the game, playing the game the right way, understanding how hard you need to work to make it to the next level. I was very fortunate to have those 2 guys in my life. And to this day, I still talk to both of those guys once, twice, 3 times a month. Rick, I ended up playing for, ended up working for after I got done playing pro ball. Coach Isaacs at the time, when he was still a high school coach, started kind of sending a few guys like Austin Keene and some other pitchers who came over and trained with us. So, no, my high school was awesome. I was, unfortunately, though, I did not play my senior year of high school. That was pretty devastating for me. The second to last weekend in the fall, I threw a pitch and felt like a knife went through my elbow. But that's kind of why I feel like I do what I do today, just to be there for guys, keep them healthy. But no, man, that was kind of a rough part of my life. I was worried about my scholarship to Ole Miss and everything. But they were true to it. They wanted me to still come down. But no, high school, at a young age, was able to play up and learn a lot more and be challenged in an older environment.
Cool.
Hey, what was the just kind of being from that Southern Illinois area? What was the high school scene like at the time? Like, who were the powerhouses? Was it still the Edwardsvilles, the O'Fallons of the world, or
Things haven't changed, Diego. Definitely. But I will say, Althoff's enrollment was more than what it is now. And we did. I mean, we were in those regionals with Belleville West. My sophomore year, we played O'Fallon in the super sectional. So we were right there competing with those guys. But no, things haven't changed. Edwardsville and O'Fallon were teams that always, year in, year out, were top dogs.
So one thing I kind of want to talk about too is just your recruiting process. You kind of mentioned that your sophomore year of high school is when things started to kind of pick up a little bit for you. Was Ole Miss one of those teams that was always there, early on for you, or were there are a few other schools in the mix there for you? And what was that process like for you?
Yeah. Things have changed. Cell phones were still up in the air, text messages, the whole nine yards. So, you couldn't wait to get home and open the mailbox. And I do. I still have Nike shoe boxes like you see from old school with all the, mail and letters that we got. Some personalized, some not. Um, and I would say too, times have changed because, there for a little bit, you're seeing freshmen commit, sophomores commit. That was very early back in 2006, 2007, 2008. So I believe that fall, it was my junior year, is when things kind of started to pick up for me. And then that summer, traveling around, that's when the phone calls started happening, more in-depth conversations. Early on, it was kind of like the Eastern Illinois, the Missouri State. I had a great relationship with Keith Gunn and Paul Evans at the time down there. Tony Vitello was at Mizzou at the time. Got invited to camp there. It was very Midwest for me until a few big tournaments. And that's when, your Ole Misses, your Clemson, South Carolina, Virginia, LSU, those were the visits that I took and had set up, or I didn't take them, and I'll explain that in a little bit. But I would probably say Ole Miss came in that summer of junior year for me going into my senior year. And they probably caught me about 4 or 5 times that summer. And I would probably say the one that really kind of did it in, I went to the national showcase. And I got a phone call after along with some other schools like, hey, we need to get you on campus. We need to do a visit. And the recruiting process for me happened quickly. I'm a big family guy. My parents have always been there for me. I've always been around them. And they've always had so much joy coming to watch myself and my brother play. Um, Ole Miss was my first visit, and I did. South Carolina, Virginia, Clemson, and LSU were visits that were going to, happen after my first visit. It was unbelievable. I mean, they were building a $32 million stadium at the time. Coach Bianco. I mean, when you sit down in a room with Coach Bianco, I mean, it's pretty much sold. To be honest with you, going through it myself, and then working there as ops, and understanding how he goes through everything and shows the stats. He could be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company if he wanted to, if you didn't, coach baseball. So that was a huge impact. But I think the biggest thing for me was, one, I fell in love with Oxford. I fell in love with the coaching staff down there. But for me, it was my parents coming to see me play. All those other schools I would have had to fly to, and same with my parents. But from Southern Illinois, you're 5 hours away. And I made that decision the next day. So I actually didn't go on and take those other visits. I committed to Ole Miss quickly, and that was a wrap.
Um, so a lot of these kids now, it, recruiting is probably different now than it is for it was for you then. But you work with a lot of guys that are dealing with these Power Five schools, and probably in the recruiting process with these Power Five schools. What is kind of a piece of advice that maybe you give them and you would give to just kids in general now for kind of navigating the recruiting process?
Create relationships. You're going through this process, finding out who you're going to play for and who you're going to run through a brick wall for. Um, and creating those relationships is super important. So we try to get guys to slow everything down, to be honest with you. Um, there's no rush because at the end of the day, you're going to go play for somebody for 4 years. Who's going to be kind of that father figure in your life? Who's going to keep pushing you and keep challenging you? Who's going to continue to develop you? And that's huge. So that's kind of a big thing that our advice is to our athletes is that exactly, is creating that relationship, because you're deciding on a place that you're going to go play for 4 years, and that's extremely important. Not only education, but on the field, and who's going to push you off the field as well. I think that's one thing that Mike Bianco did a great job for us, for all the athletes at Ole Miss. So I think that's our biggest thing is slow everything down. Everybody wants everything to happen now, now, now. But no, slow down and figure out who you want to be with and where you want to go. And I think that's a really just important piece that we talk to guys about.
Yeah. So you're at Ole Miss now. We're on campus. So I went through your baseball reference and was looking at your stats from your years at Ole Miss. Your freshman year, you had it looks like 30 innings that you threw. So what was that process going from high school to college like for you? Was it, first day on campus or first day at practice? Was that kind of eye-opening to you and, you had some nerves coming in, or were you ready to go and confident that you were going to get in there and start throwing right away?
So actually, I was redshirted my freshman year, and that's something we talk about a lot with our athletes. That's okay. I was a small town kid from Belleville, Illinois, walking into an SEC school. The best thing that happened to me as a redshirt freshman, I got to sit there and I got to watch some of the best do it. And things are different. I mean, it's a high level of play. People compare high A baseball to SEC baseball. So really sitting back for me was really important, and watching everything. Cause like I mentioned earlier, I had Tommy John late fall. So I didn't pitch in the inter squads in my fall of my freshman year till at the end. So I think the biggest thing for me was just getting acclimated on campus, getting acclimated with the structure at Ole Miss. Cause it is like you get your classes done by 12 and then it is baseball the rest of the day. So I think that was the best thing that happened to me, to be honest with you, is getting redshirted, and being able to really, one, see how the game's played in the SEC, and two, just learn from the older guys. Scott Biddle was a guy who was one of the best closers in the country that I kind of attached to. And I got to learn with him. So my actual first year on the field, I actually think I had 31 appearances as a freshman. And I think it was around 58 innings my freshman year. And it was taxing on me. I didn't even go play summer ball. But it was good to learn from guys like that. I totally changed my whole program of how I played catch. You come in as a starter because, let's be honest, college coaches aren't recruiting, relievers. So coming in as a starter, trying to understand how to change catch play up. I was a big long toss guy, and it had to turn to I was only going 120 feet a day. When I got to 120 feet, I'm ripping it. So it was a big change in that aspect of things. Mentality was a big thing. Understanding, when you're the closer, you're it. You're the guy. So being able to, dig deep and open up and see who you really are inside when the going gets tough. There is a lot of learning. Even freshman year to senior year, there is just every day you're learning more.
What's something that you wish that now that you wish you knew in college that would have helped you maybe at that time to get more success?
Mobility. I think that's
a
huge.
Big mobility guy.
I think that's huge. The game has changed for the better. We're really being able to individualize things now. Back then, it was we're going to put as much weight on the bar as we can. We're going to move it, and that's what we did, and we loved it. I would never take any of that back. But I think mobility. I think kind of throughout the years, I probably didn't move as well down the mound. Because of that, there wasn't an importance on mobility. And I think if I could go back now, that's the number one thing that I would focus on.
What's your favorite story playing in the SEC? Obviously it's like, nowadays across the board, every sport, it's the most famous conference, right?
Yeah.
I know you play with some big time dudes because we talked about it. So what's your favorite story? And with that, where's the toughest place to play?
Favorite story doesn't even have anything to do with me. John Gatlin was a junior college transfer for us. John is the ultimate team guy. Big physical kid. And it's Friday night. It's LSU. We have him at home. Coach Godwin at the time was our hitting coach. He's now the head coach at East Carolina. And, he had their hitters meeting. He showed an interview of Kevin Gosman talking about hey, Ole Miss is the wannabe LSU. Like, hey, like we're gonna bring it tonight. Well, John got his first start at DH. Um, Hits a rocket in like the second inning down the line. Third base makes a great play, gets him out to end the inning. But I mean, he smokes one, and it's a fastball. And John, ran through first base. He's kind of running back, and Kevin's walking off the field, who's the best pitcher in the SEC at the time. And he's like, he goes, "I'm all over you." And Gosman just stopped in his tracks and said, "Who are you again?" And it just kept walking. And John comes in, and he's like, "He got me good, guys. Like, I got nothing on that."
Oh, that's incredible. That's incredible.
So, I mean, there's a bunch, but that one really sticks out. I think just because John and I were, really close friends, and it was one of those we just were dying in the locker room. We ended up winning that night, 2-1, in extra innings, I believe. Hardest place to play. It's always going to be Mississippi State because that's our rival. I mean, you go there, you're warming up in the bullpen, or you doing anything. They know everything about you. They know your girlfriend. They know your mom's name, your dad's name. It is ruthless. But you got to love that stuff. And I would probably say at that time too, because they were hot, South Carolina was extremely tough to play in as well. A lot of people would probably say that Alex Box is awesome, and it gets loud, but they don't get on you. They're very respectable. They cheer for you when you make good plays. But Mississippi State down in Starkville and South Carolina at the time when I was there, when you went there, I mean, they were all over you. But some guys, would step up to that, and some guys, they could feel it. But that's part of the game.
Yeah, it's a different world in the SEC, man. I've heard some pretty crazy things, some pretty crazy stories from people that have played at Arkansas, at LSU, at Tennessee. It's a different, it's life down there. Sports for life in that part of the country.
And I could say, Ole Miss with our student section in right field. It's just, at that time the away team was in, their bullpen was in right field. I mean, you could say the same about ours too. I just never had to deal with that because that was our home.
Yeah.
So moving to pro ball, you got drafted by the Tigers.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of again, I asked you with college, but I imagine, getting into pro ball is another big career hump, like figuring things out. So what was the difference, and what was it like transitioning from college ball? Obviously, you're in the SEC, a lot of good talent, but still going from college to pro ball what's that like?
Depth. I mean, everybody around you is just as good as you, or even better. So I think that was huge, like drastic change for me of just everybody you walk in. I mean, everybody's a dude. I think for me too, a little bit it was different, and the game hasn't changed. Whether you're getting paid for it or not, and you can't treat that as, oh, it's a business now. It's still the game you played when you're 8 years old. And somebody like Zander, we talked about that. Who was drafted last year in the second round. Nothing's changed. You're still who you are. The game is still the same game. So I think that was a little bit of a change for me. But also, you get treated like royalty in the SEC, probably even more now. And going from the SEC with, anywhere from 8 to 13,000 people in a stadium, you're going to some games where it's 500 people in a stadium. You're not getting the pregame and postgame meals you got in the SEC. So that was all different for me. But being able to play a game every single day for 100 and something games, like there's nothing better than that. Is it a long season? Yes. I don't like the word grind because if you love it, it ain't a grind. I'm sorry, but I'll argue that with anybody. But no, it's something you love to do, and you get to do it every day. And you're surrounded by people who all have the same goal.
So on a game day, what was your kind of day in the life, especially if you knew you were going to throw that day? What was that kind of like for you?
Well, I wouldn't golf if I knew I was throwing that day. I was lucky enough to have a lot of guys that enjoyed golf, including myself. I'd always like to get some type of light workout in the morning, to be honest with you, to get up and get moving. Nothing too strenuous, though, because you got to throw that night. Would usually go get some breakfast, get a coffee, get to the field real early. And it was, I had a good relationship with our PT at the time with the Tigers. And it's kind of that pre-work, prehab before the game that night. And it was always changing just on how you felt. I got really into the mental side of things. Brian Kane was a sports psychologist that came to Ole Miss quite a bit when I was there. And I continued that stuff. We got books from him. He would have little, daily puzzles or whatever it is to kind of get your focus going that day. And that was something that I try to do every day. And then I would write in my journal. That was kind of part of it too, of what I was feeling, how the last few days have been. And it's just more of getting yourself in that mindset before the game. And then I kind of mentioned earlier, becoming a reliever. I was more kind of a reliever setup guy when I got to the pro ball, from being a closer. So not much really changed, but, catch play was short, but very aggressive, getting your arm loose. Because when you go to the bullpen, I prided myself in 4 crow hops, and then I'm just ripping fastballs for 8 of them. And I could turn around and tell the coach I was ready because I know I'm going to get a few sliders while the coach walks out there, and then I'm going to get 8 on the field. So that's kind of what my day looked like, and how my kind of routine went before games. And then after games, if I threw, I'd go back to that journal. You got to take the good and the bad from everything and write that stuff down. And I think that was really important for me because when things were good, I could go back and see why things were good. And when things were tough, I'd go back and see, hey, am I repeating myself here, or what am I doing differently? And you could fix that.
Yeah, I think that that stuff is so good, man. Like it's gold, really. Like there's so many people that are so talented, like on the field, that don't really get that baseball is all mental, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're, especially on the mound, it all starts and ends on the mound. If you're not good up here, you're only going to get so far.
Mm-hmm.
So for anybody that's listening to this, that's really good advice. Like to figure yourself mentally and what works for you, whether you're a pitcher or a hitter, it's the key to unlock essentially reaching a new level in the game. But kind of going off that, like I know it was brief, but is there who's the best player you ever played against in pro ball? Is there someone that stands out? Maybe it's the best guy you were around, a particular at bat. What do you got?
It wasn't even pro ball because I didn't play against him in pro ball. I would probably say 2 people, but the one that really stands out to me when we played Florida was Mike Zunino. He was a catcher at the time. Diego, you could go back in 2019. I was sitting there with my friends, and they asked, "Hey, who'd you all play with or played against?" There's 9 people that I either played with or against in the 2019 All-Star game, and it's just really cool. It kind of gives you chills when you look at it, but I mean, you can go back to Drew Pomerantz, Mike Zunino, Jackie Bradley Jr. It's a list that doesn't end. But Mike Zunino, how he carried himself, and just the leader he was on Florida, you could just see it when you stepped on a field with him. That whole entire team looked up to him and followed his lead. And he wasn't a big hurrah, I'm going to yell so everybody can hear me. That guy just straight up led by example, and he was really good at what he did.
Yeah, so that's awesome. Like that. I mean, those are guys that, everyone's going to know. Those are big time names, so it's awesome. But kind of moving on now to what you're up to now. So you own Maximize Pitching Lab down there in Southern Illinois. And you guys, there's a new facility, the Sports Barn, and Diego was saying, I think last week you guys were there, and Diego was checking it out for the first time. I hear it's pretty awesome. So how's the new setup in the facility?
I mean, it's state of the art. I mean, it's beautiful, first class. Chris Craddock has done an unbelievable job. They do have one in Lake St. Louis, and they've built a 36,000 square foot sports barn in Wood River, Illinois. It is, I mean, we're very fortunate enough to have the space we have. The weight room's right behind our space. They have 6 cages that are controlled electric. You can pull the cages up or down. They have a full infield. So for us, it's great for our guys. They're able to actually play catch with each other. One thing that I've always struggled with doing this is watching guys just throw into a net. It's just really tough to watch sometimes. And sometimes it can create bad habits for guys. So being able to have that ability to play catch with each other is huge. The infield, being able to go out there and throw live, we plan on doing that towards the end of February before the guys roll into spring. So really looking forward to that. So the space in general is just it. We couldn't have asked for a better space to move into. I've known Chris for a long time. I've known Seth Von Barron, who was actually at South Alabama and recruited me when I was in high school. Jake DePew and Jake was 2 years younger than me. We both played for the St. Louis Pirates, knew each other very well, have always had a relationship. And then guys like Tim Funkhauser and Joe Bauer. I've known those guys for a long time. I've had a relationship with those guys. So it was really exciting for us and our staff to be able to move into that building. But just about Maximize Pitching Lab, when I got done playing pro ball, I got into training. Rick Strickland brought me back, and I actually coached then. I coached for the St. Louis Pirates for a few years. But the training side of things, it wasn't like that when we grew up. We had bullpens. We didn't have drill packages, movement packages, med ball packages, velocity programs, weighted balls. Like, this was all new to me. So I said, hey, we're going to bring Kyle Bodie in. You're going to meet Kyle. You're going to learn more. So he came in, got to learn a lot there, actually got sent out to Driveline for a weekend, got to hang out there for a weekend, learned so much through that. Also in that time too, Rick hooked me up with Lance Wheeler. Lance Wheeler is the owner and, started the Core Velocity Belt. He was in Nashville at the time. That was a 4-hour drive. I went there once, twice a month, and it was so cool. Like, every time you go there, it's like Butch Thompson's there. Or, the list goes on, but just learning outside of just Lance, and Kyle, and just having those conversations with everybody, we started putting I started putting my own program together. Had a lot of success with it. Guys like Caden Monk, who went to Arkansas, who's still playing, Eric Kaiser, who went to Vanderbilt, James Proctor, who went to Princeton, he's still playing with the Reds. Hayden Yinger, out of O'Fallon, Illinois, being able to train all those guys. Those guys walked through my door. I was lucky. And then, I got a job back down at Ole Miss for 2 years. I did. I wanted to get back into coaching. I actually, was in conversations with Vanderbilt and Ole Miss for the director of operations at the same time. Obviously, you're going to pick your alma mater. So went down there, did it for 2 years, really enjoyed it. But just, I don't know, I woke up one day and it was time for me to move on. And I just wanted to kind of come back home, to be honest with you. So I actually ended up getting a sales job when I got back here. But then Zander Mueth was the guy. I trained Zander when he was 9 to 12, and then I left. And then when I got back, him and his father and my father are very close. They're in the Shriners together. Craig texted me and said, hey, I heard you back. Would love you to get back in with Zander. And it just kind of hit me. I was missing the game. And I was like, hey, this is kind of the time I can get back into this. But at my own pace, my own hours, I'm going to be in charge. And I did. And things grew quickly. We were out of Belleville, Illinois, in a small facility called Kings Point. We're there for 2 to 3 years. And then it was time to make a change. We needed more space. We were growing. We went to a building in Collinsville at the time. And that's when I was like, hey, we need to start a brand. We are growing. Let's do this. So sat down, came up with Maximize Pitching Lab. We were in Collinsville for 2 years. Again, continued to grow. Guys like Ethan Bagwell, Josh McDevitt, Owen Kelly, Dylan Menino, Drew Winslow. Guys started coming in the door there too. It's like, man, this is fun. And then the opportunity came with Sports Barn. And just like I said earlier, the relationships I've always had with those guys, the space, everything involved, it was just the right fit for us. So we moved in about, I want to say 4 weeks ago. And it's been everything we've asked for. The athletes love it. We had to have a conversation with them, though. I mean, I think Southern Illinois guys pride themselves in being blue collar. I really do. We drink out of a hose. We have dirt underneath our fingernails, and that's who we are, and we're going to outwork you. So we had to have that conversation of you didn't deserve this building. You were fortunate to have this building, and now you have everything you need to go and have the career that you want to have. So it's been special, man. It's been great, and we can't thank Chris and the Sports Barn enough for, inviting us in.
So you just rattled off like a laundry list of dudes, right? Like some of the best arms that have come down from this part of the state. What's a common trait in like a common intangible trait in some of the best players you train? Like, what's the it factor? What do all these guys have that kind of separates them from the rest?
Um, we do. I think one thing why we had a lot of success is our intimacy with our athletes and the conversations we can have. Because if you go look at our staff, we've all been there. We've all been in the big games. We've been in the big environments. We've played professionally. We've had that experience. And guys that have bought in to our program, guys that have trusted the process. One thing I've realized with all these guys, when you can abbreviate that, what's important now, and those guys have taken that and have run with it. It is how much attention to detail can I have on this rep, and this is the only rep that matters right now. And the guys that stay where their feet are and stay present are the guys that we have seen that have a lot of success. Like I mentioned earlier, like guys want to have it now. Who's got the magic wand? Those guys have trusted the process and have stayed where their feet are. And it is attention to detail to every single rep. Can I make this rep the best rep that I've done today? And then that rep's over, and then it's the next rep. And how important is this rep that's right in front of me right now? And I think those guys that stay present have had the most success that we've seen.
So let's talk about like some of the guys you train now, right? Like we've had a really like a good track record of dudes that have walked through that building. Who are some of the guys now? The standout guys, the high level guys, the next wave of Maximized Pitching Lab athletes.
There's a very talented 2025 class that's in our building right now. And I think that starts off with Joe Shiroto. Somebody who walks in and physically you're probably like, oh, okay. And then you watch the kid go to work. It's impressive. He's committed to Alabama, lost 15 pounds due to the flu recently, got his feet back underneath him. First pen looked pretty easy, 90-92. I think that's going to continue to climb. You'll probably see a 4 or a 5 out of him this year. I really mean that. Somebody that who I think is very much like Don Bogley, who's going to stay under the radar, is Austin Musso. Austin Musso is a physical kid, broad-shouldered, sat 90-91 in his first pen the other day, and it is a strike machine. So really looking forward to watching him continue his success this spring. Dax Dunnell's a surprise, left-handed pitcher who is uncommitted, sat 88-89 the other day, 6'3", 195, big physical kid. You have Connor Blue, committed to Cincinnati. I think he averaged a fastball at 90 the other day. Cy Kraft is one that we are very intrigued by. He is a 2027 who was up to 88 his first bullpen, and very effortless. Somebody whose dad's about 6'4", he's about 6 foot, about 6 foot right now, with that baby face still. And it's just like, okay, this is going to come and it's going to be really good. Tommy Kramkowski has made a lot of big jumps this year. Somebody who's always been really able to pitch. And that's important because at the end of the day, you got to get outs. But it was always kind of a low to mid 80 guy. First bullpen, sat 89. Every fastball out of his hand was 89. And he's kind of always been a guy that velo's always a little down in the facility because he's a gamer. So I wouldn't be surprised. He's an 89, 92 guy. Anthony Perez out of O'Fallon. He's a sophomore left-handed pitcher. He's a 2026. Along with Dylan Jantz, who's a tall right-handed pitcher out of O'Fallon. He's a 2026 as well. Both sat 85, 87, and both first-year guys in our program. I think we see a lot of success out of guys that end up, in our program. You see it that second or third year. But those guys have really figured it out the first year. And I'm sure I'm missing some names. I mean, the Barker twins, they were both 89, 91 first bullpen, committed to Arkansas State, 2024s. And there's other guys too, but I think those names right now are the ones that really stick out.
You mentioned Austin Musso, and you were talking about how you Southern Illinois guys are very blue collar. I am also from a very small town by Peoria. But so anyway, I was doing something like this at the Future Games with Austin. It was like a little down the line, like from home to right field. And we kind of talked about Southern Illinois, and you could just tell like the pride on his face he had representing this part of the state when he was talking about it and just kind of what it means. And I think being at events like that where you're representing the state as a whole, but at the same time you're representing your region, I think it's cool seeing these smaller town guys that are outside of Chicago get to represent their area on a big stage like that. Because you can just tell how much it means to these kids too. So that was really cool to see for me.
Yeah, same thing for Chiroto too, right? You talk about kind of undersized, like he's not your prototypical 6'3", 205 guy. He's probably 5'11". But two-time state champ, got the ball in the state semifinals last year as a sophomore and really dominated a really good team. Um, has pitched in big games. Like, I mean, you watched, I don't know, man. I don't know if there's a guy in the state I'm giving the ball to win me a baseball game right now over Joe Chiroto, and it's that blue collar mentality. It's three pitches, he goes at you. It's always strike one. He's ahead all the time. Fiery kid. Like, it's a real thing down here. The pride, the mentality, the hey, let's go to work. I'm not messing around. It's one, two, three pitches to my mound. Get out of here. Like a lot of the guys down here, whether it's now or even last year, like you mentioned, Meath, vaguely, McDevitt, Gabe Smith, another guy that just goes after dudes. You see it time and time again. Like the southern part of the state is starting to be known for its arms. Like the best arms the last couple of years have come from down here. So
And, and you're 100% right on Joe. And, it's our first year with Joe in the building, and you're right. You can challenge Joe, or if somebody does a little something better than Joe, he is going to find a way to beat you. And you've heard that, but when you see it in person, that kid is the ultimate competitor. Like he loves to compete. So I couldn't agree more on that. And to be honest with you, being over in the St. Louis area, you kind of touched on that with Southern Illinois guys. That was a big reason why we brought, or why I decided to go over to Southern Illinois, because we are aware of the athletes in the sticks, and they didn't have the type of training or the type of environment that we have created. And that was a big reason we went to Southern Illinois. So now you're kind of seeing kids coming out of the sticks, and you're just like, man, this is why we're here. And we're happy to be there.
What's one thing that you kind of see when you look at, say, a freshman or something, and maybe their velo's not there, their 70s, whatever, but you see something in them, and you know that you can help develop them to become the best version of themselves, on the mound. What do you see in those young guys that makes you excited and makes you believe in them?
I think their want to get better. Those guys want to be there. They don't have to be there. That's one thing you hear from some people say it's a want, not a have to. And those guys have big dreams. And being able to put a program in front of them that involves pitching, that involves strength, that involves mobility, everything that they need, you give those guys those programs, you just get out of the way. And then you're there, eyes on them, just to help them implement certain things and have those conversations that are intelligent and get them to understand some things, how the lower half works, what is separation, all that kind of stuff. And everybody's a little bit different. But I think just the Southern Illinois guys, it's just kind of one of those, man, you just give them what they need and you just get out of the way.
yeah, I think too, like, and you and I have talked about guys, plenty of guys that are freshmen, sophomores, that maybe they're 77, 79 right now, but they move the right way.
Mm-hmm.
Or the arm is clean, it's loose, it works out front, they can spin a breaking ball. The body's good. Like you talk about Cy Kraft, he looks like he's 12, right? Probably has never
Mm-hmm.
shaved before. I think it's just kind of going back to what you talked about earlier, trusting that process, right? Like everybody nowadays, they want to wave that wand and be upper 80s as a 15-year-old and spin a banger breaking ball and be awesome right away. But at least in my experience doing this, like the guys that are really good and are super like out like more physical than everybody when they're 13, 14, 15, they kind of get complacent and they get
Mm-hmm.
passed up. So I think it's just really important for people to know that like where you are where you're when you're 14 is not where you want to be, right? Like if you're the best version of yourself when you're 14 and a freshman in high school, that's not the goal. The goal is to be the best version of yourself when you're stepping on the college campus, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
right? So kind of trusting that process is something that I feel like needs to be harped on a lot. And I know you guys do that, which is awesome.
Everybody has their own path. Some have it earlier and some have it later. A great example is Zander Mueth was always on top. After his freshman summer, he was on top. And then you take a guy like Gabe Smith, who you just mentioned, who started with us overweight, came in at 255, didn't have an understanding of how the body moved. And to watch somebody like that who had no recruiting, zero, probably going to end up at a junior college, sat him down, talked about nutrition, talked about strength training, started his senior year, what, 225, 230, and was electric. And now that was the focus then. Now the focus of, is the stuff. Can we get the breaking ball better? And he's continuing to improve in all assets of the game.
What's one thing that you could tell a pitcher that they should be doing every day that they can just do at home? Something simple that's super important that they might not even realize, but you could just do it at home.
Well, Diego likes this one, and I said it earlier, and I'll say it again. It's mobility. That is the most important thing. Guys that are throwing 100 miles an hour aren't doing it by accident. Those guys are athletes and can move efficiently. Now, there's a kinetic chain, how everything needs to stay connected. But everybody kind of has their own art and look of how they throw. But if you can get your body to move better, because this is the thing, we're confident in MPL that we can get guys better. But you're always going to have those bumps in the road or brick walls, whatever they are, and they're usually involved with mobility. So if I can give any advice, man, go get a movement screen with a PT, or find somebody who does an FMS testing or whatever it is, and get a mobility program and get yourself to move better. Because when guys are doing that, those walls that you hit become little speed bumps, and we can get through those.
This might be kind of tough with how many guys you've trained, but is there a specific player when you look back at their development over the years that you had worked with them, do you feel like you're probably most proud of, helping them achieve their dream and get to, where they are now?
Yeah, I would say Caden Monk is number one on that list for us. Caden Monk is a small town kid out of Mount Olive, Illinois. I think he was like a 2015 grad. Was a nobody. I mean, this is when I kind of was with the St. Louis Pirates and coaching. Was always athletic, always undersized, though, and we liked him. But a kid who never complained about being on the quote-unquote second team for the St. Louis Pirates. Would come in and continue to work, never ask questions, never bad body language, and always believed in himself. And was a 78 to 82 guy all throughout high school. Junior summer going into senior year, started kind of growing a little bit, kind of figuring a few things out, 84, 86. Then goes to the fall, keeps happening. Then it's turning to 86, 88. And you could just see it on his face then, like he's calling, like I'm coming in, like I'm close, like light bulb's about to turn around. I'm about to figure this out. He didn't commit to Arkansas until after Jupiter that year, of his senior year. And I think, going and watching him, then he didn't pitch much as a freshman, but, I think at the time, he's the head coach at UGA now. I can't remember his name. He's the head coach at UGA. Yes.
Yeah, the pitching coach at LSU last year, Wes Johnson.
Yeah. And I remember getting a call from him like, hey, like, he's not going to pitch much this year, but this kid does exactly what we tell him to do. He doesn't complain. And I'm like, you're telling me what I already know. And doesn't pitch much as a freshman, and then goes balls out sophomore and junior year, gets drafted, and now he's in AA or AAA with, the Royals. And that is one of the happiest probably I've been to see an athlete who literally was just behind everybody and just always believed in himself, never questioned anything, bought in, and look where he's at now. And I think one day he'll find himself pitching in a big league game at some point.
So how's training different now from when you first started doing it? What's kind of the biggest thing that you think has changed?
Oh, man. At all, I guess. I think just the technology. Getting in it, like Rapsoda wasn't even there yet. I think a Motus sleeve was kind of starting to be around. But, we dove into the drive line and everything. The resources that you have now, if you don't use those and implement them into your program, you're just going to be behind. You are. And being able to have the TrackMan or the Rapsodo or the machines that we have in our strength room for our guys, and even, go back to our movement consultant. As a whole, baseball has done an unbelievable job of continuing its development for its athletes. I think it's the best out of all the sports. I mean, you're seeing facilities all over the country of guys just getting better. And it's really fun to watch. So I would say just the resources you have, the technology. We use Driveline Track, and that has been a savior for us with all the athletes we train. We can pinpoint exactly what's going on. We can individualize programs. So I think I just would have to say the technology and the resources we're able to have now.
Yeah. That's all I've got. Diego, do you have anything else you want to ask him or talk to him about?
No, man, I'm good. I thought that was great. It was great. A lot of good nuggets there, like a lot of great content. So appreciate you taking the time out of your day to hop on here and kind of give us some of your wisdom on the pitching side.
Yeah, no, and if anybody's out there listening, if I can tell you, man, preparation meets opportunity. I've said it all along. I learned it at a young age, and it kind of goes back to staying where your feet are. Worry about where your feet are and work hard, and you're going to find opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you, Brett. We will be sure to kind of give some love to your Maximize Pitching Lab Twitter. We'll tag you guys and stuff. And so everyone, make sure you guys go follow them and check them out. They have some awesome content on their Twitter. So Brett, appreciate you doing this. It was really nice to meet you. First time getting to meet right now. So this was awesome. I appreciate it.
No, thank you guys so much. And I really enjoyed this, and hopefully we'll see each other soon.